My name is Kyle Royer.
Oh, it's hot. It's really hot.
And I'm making my second ever sword named Excelsior.
It's even more steel than I used on my first sword.
So let's embark together on this epic edged adventure. In this video, we're gonna do the gold inlay on Excelsior's guard. And then we're gonna finally etch and reveal the pattern on the blade and see how all that forging of the damascus really looks in the end. I finally have all the gold inlay done on the guard. We have a lot of hand sanding to do though. I want to go ahead and do the first grit of hand sanding so we can see what the gold looks like. Because right now we've got all this rough gold kind of sticking up. So I'm going to go over the entire guard with 220 grit and we'll really get a feel for how the gold inlay is looking. After that, I'm going to break away and start working on etching and hand sanding the blade. Only in the other order. I'm going to hand sand and then etch the blade. The reason I'm going to break away and do the blade before all the gold inlay is done is so that it can be coffee darkening and etching and all that stuff that sometimes takes a few days in order to get it just right, especially with the coffee darkening. And that way I'll be able to come back to it and mess around with the coffee darkening while I'm working on the other fittings instead of just standing around waiting for the coffee darkening to get done. I am at long last done hand sanding the blade. It's at 1500 grit. I spent a full 2 days working on sanding this thing. This is the most hand sanding I've done since hand sanding my other sword blade, probably. The entire thing's up to 1500 grit. The blade bevels, the fuller, the ricasso, the edges of the ricasso are all at 1500 grit, so we're more than ready for etching. So next thing we need to do is set aside the blade for a minute and get our etching solution ready to go. I've got a tank here. Dad made me up a brand new tank that's gonna be just for etching the blade and for coffee darkening the blade. So we need to mix up our ferric chloride mixture. I'm gonna use ferric chloride, 4 parts water to 1 part acid. Once the acid's mixed up, we can start etching the blade. To etch it, I'm probably gonna do like some 8 to 10 minute cycles, probably 3 of those. In between each cycle, I'm gonna bring it out into the shop. I've got another tube that's gonna have baking soda water mixed up in it, and that'll neutralize the acid. We'll stick it in there for a couple minutes in between each cycle, and then I'll take it over to my sanding 2x4, and we'll sand it with 1500 and maybe 2500 and then 3000, and I even bought some 5000 grit sandpaper to try out. And we'll clean off all those dirty oxides and stuff that form in between each etching cycle, and then we'll put it back in the acid and keep going through that process until we've got the etch completely done to the proper depth. We'll sand on it one final time, normalize it, and then probably do some light buffing and move on to coffee darkening to get that dark steel extra dark to get the maximum amount of contrast on the blade so it has a dramatic look between the 15 and 20 bright steel and the 1084 really dark steel. I'm gonna use this soda jug to measure out the ferric chloride mixture. So the pipe takes about 1.5 of these jugs. So we're gonna mix up a full jug of 4:1 ferric chloride and water. And I've got a scale here to kind of help me figure it out. And I've already weighed this full and it weighs like 4 pounds and 12 ounces. So I'm gonna put about 1 pound and 4 ounces of ferric chloride in here, and then we'll fill the rest up with water and shake it up really well, and then we'll put it in here, and then we'll mix up another half batch and dump that in as well. That really looks dangerous. That actually looks like it could be soda in there. And then this should be 4:1 mixture of ferric chloride and water. Our ferric chloride should be ready to go. If I need a little bit more, I've got some right there. I'll go ahead and put these things away. And we need to get the blade cleaned, really clean. So I'm gonna use water and Dawn dish soap and wipe the blade down many times and try to get all the oils and stuff off. And then we'll be ready to finally see what the finished pattern looks like on our finished heat treated and sanded blade, because it's gonna be a lot different than our first reveal was earlier. Because way back at the beginning of the project, we could see what the pattern was gonna be like, but it wasn't on heat treated steel that has a 1500 grit finish, and it'll look a lot better on the actual sword blade now that all that work's been done to it. It's a brand new day. The acid is ready to go. We need to get the blade cleaned off and then go ahead and submerge it fully in our ferric chloride mixture. We need to clean it really well so there's no oils or anything on there, because it can make it etch really weird if you leave oils on it. And currently it's covered in WD-40 because, like I said, it's a new day and I like to make sure the blade isn't gonna rust overnight. So I oiled it down. Normally I clean my blades off in the kitchen under the sink with nice warm water. But on this lovely day, I'm gonna be using the freezing cold water outside while it's 45 degrees, and we need to clean this off really well because this won't fit under my sink. The only other option would maybe be the shower. But we're gonna do it outside. We'll have somebody running the garden hose. I've got a sponge and some Dawn dish soap. Get all the oils cleaned off and start etching. Here we go. Need to remember to stir it around a little bit. Make sure it goes down in there far enough. Since we mixed it up in a couple different batches, I'm gonna make sure it's kind of all equalized out a little bit. We'll leave it sitting here for a minute or two, and then I'll pull it out and see how it's looking. And if it's looking good, we'll probably put it back in and leave it in there for 5 to 8 minutes, maybe 10. It's been so long since I did the test etch on this Damascus, I think I've forgotten what the pattern looks like. I know it's bold with some really cool stuff running down the middle, but that's all I remember.
later.
It's finally time to remember what this pattern looks like. It's been a couple of months since I made it, and we're gonna finally see how it's looking on this blade after the first little bit of etching. Oh man. Oh, that's crazy. That's pretty cool. I think I'm gonna go ahead and neutralize the blade now and clean all the oxides off right now, even though it's only been in there for like 2 minutes. Because sometimes you can have little bits of oil left on the blade, and if you just let it etch for like 2 minutes, then clean those oxides off, it gets rid of all the residual oil that may have been on there, and I end up with a cleaner etch. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean it all down right now and get it neutralized, and then we'll stick it back in. 2 or 3 more cycles like that, and this blade should be fully etched and ready to move on to polishing and coffee darkening after that. I still have a little bit of polishing to do on the blade before we coffee darken it, but I want to go ahead and get the coffee mixture mixed up because it needs to be mixed up in warm water, and I want it to cool down a little bit before I put my blade in there. So that way we can mix it up, let this cool down while I'm finishing the polishing on my blade, and then it'll all be ready to go and we can do our coffee dunk. So we've got Nescafe Bold Roast, and then I'm going to take 1 whole container of this, and we're just going to mix it all in there. This is just warm water. I use the hottest water out of my sink, and then I also put the whole jar in the microwave for about 4 minutes just to heat it up a little bit more. So it's probably, I'm not gonna guess on how hot it is. I'm not good at guessing how hot liquids are, but it's not super hot, and it's not cold either. One might even say lukewarm. That is dark. All right, that should be good. I'm gonna go back to polishing my blade, but first, it's time for coffee break. It's gone, man. That's really strong. That's really strong. 100 cups worth and about 15 cups worth of water. 1 small sip is enough to fill the stomach of a grown man with coffee for the rest of the week. Ah. Got the blade all polished up. I went over it with the buffer to get it nice and shiny, and I also went over it with the sunshine cloth because I have this theory that the coffee darkening sticks even better after you've gone over it with the sunshine cloth. I don't know if that's true or not. I've done it on the last couple blades and seemed to get really good results. So gone over it with that. Got the coffee mixed up, ready to go in this tube. Everything's cleaned off really, really well. We're gonna go ahead and submerge it, and then I'm gonna leave it for a few hours, and then I'll check on it, and I'll leave it in here possibly overnight. Kind of depends on how it's looking after a couple hours. I might possibly take it out after 3 or 4 hours, or leave it in overnight and then take it out and then go from there. I may need to do the coffee darkening a few times in order to get the finish that I want. After it's been in there a few hours or overnight, I'll take it out and see how it's looking, and I'll probably do the sunshine cloth again to clean up the surface and see how it's looking, and then depending on how it's looking, I'll either put it back in for more time or it'll be done one way or the other. You just saw the blade, how I want it to look coffee darkened. There was just a little issue I had with the ricasso, so I decided to mess around with it. I've been messing around with it like all day, and it's actually gone backwards. So I'm doing some things to re-coffee darken it right now, and I hope to get it looking really good, like what you just saw, and get everything looking good though, and not have that little bit of problem I had on the ricasso. So I'll keep messing around with it, using the sunshine cloths and steel wool and a bunch of other tricks I've got up my sleeve, and we'll see if we can get it looking perfect. So until then, I will see you in the next video. May the forge be with you. Bye-bye.